Okay, so we will continue our discussion on the product market by digging in now to the demand side. So, if we look at demand, we want to define it. It's a schedule, and it's a schedule of what consumers are willing and able to pay at various prices. So, over here, for example, I have a price point of $1. And at $1 in this example, 500 units are being sold. That's the quantity demanded that corresponds to that price point. If the price increases to $1.50, then the quantity demanded will decrease to 400. Price goes to $2, it decreases further to 300, and so on. This is a demand table. You can take the table with the various data points and create a demand curve. So when we're looking at the market, we will have price on the y-axis, quantity on the x-axis, and you can see at a price point of $2.50, 200 units, and so on. Now, one thing that we should point out right off of the bat is that all other things equal, there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity. That is called the law of demand. Now, why does the law of demand exist? Let's think about this for a second in terms of the definition of demand. Demand is a schedule of willing and able, and a price that is going up affects both of those key words, okay? As the price increases, some people are no longer able to make the purchase, so they drop out of the market, which reduces the quantity demanded. Also, as the price increases, you're going to have some people that no longer want to make the purchase because the price is becoming higher than what they value it at. So, for example, if we've got a consumer that values this product at $1.25, when the price goes from $1 to $1.50, they end up dropping out of the market. And so we have this downward sloping to the right demand curve. Now, one thing I want to point out is demand is this entire curve, and quantity demanded are specific points on the curve that correspond to a price point. Okay, so this is a quantity demanded at that price, quantity demanded at that price, and so on. So when we say that the demand has increased, we are literally saying that the entire curve has moved to the right. If it's a movement along the curve, then we're talking about quantity demanded. And that's the key distinction here between demand and quantity demanded. Move the entire curve, demand has shifted. Movement along the curve, quantity demand has changed. Okay. And we can look at the market as a compilation of individual demand curves. So let's say we've got these three fine gentlemen here, and they each have different preferences for a particular product. So at a price point of $1, Dean would purchase 5 units, Sam 8, Castiel 2. We can derive this market demand curve by a simple addition across, such that at a price of $1, the quantity is 15 for that group of 3 consumers. What about at $4? Well, Dean will only buy 2 units, Sam would buy 5, and Castiel will buy none. So that means at $4, our market quantity would be 7. Now, the reality is markets are comprised of thousands, sometimes millions of consumers. And so it's not as easy to make simple addition. But what I do want you guys to kind of keep in mind as we go forward is that these curves represent buying preferences of thousands, maybe millions of consumers, okay? And again, if we look at the demand curves, when we say that demand has increased, that means at the same price point here of $4, now there is more quantity demanded um, in the system. So the entire curve has shifted to the right. And when we talk about the demand curve shifting, it'll shift because of the six main non-price determinants. Okay. And I'm going to go through each one kind of in short order. So the first is market size, and this is pretty straightforward. If the market gets bigger, you should start to see more demand for a product. So, for example, there's going to be more demand for ride shares like Uber or Lyft in a big city like Chicago, Illinois, than you will see in a small city like Martinsville, Indiana. Another way to think about this is in terms of population. As a city becomes more populous, you will see more demand for things, particularly housing. That's why certain areas of the country that are having growth spurts in population, a lot of times also have a lot of pressure on home prices because the demand is increasing faster than the supply. And with cities where there is population exodus, you will see downward pressure as people leave. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is income. Now, income affects the ability to make purchases, and in economics, we generally will divide purchases into a couple categories. We've got normal goods. These are goods that as we make more income, we tend to buy more of, like brand name groceries. Inferior goods are goods that as you make more money, you tend to buy less of it. So a classic example of an inferior good would be ramen noodles. As people start making more money, they tend to shift their consumption patterns to other higher quality products. Okay? A third factor, and this is huge, substitutes. So if there are viable substitutes, and what I mean by substitutes is something that a person will purchase in place of another product with what we call a minimal loss of utility. So I'm generally fine if I have Jif peanut butter or Peter Pan. Okay, I'm not too picky among the brands. Then that would have an impact on the demand curve. Now, what do we mean? Well, let's take an example. Let's say that the price of Jif peanut butter goes up by $2. Consumers may shift their purchase to Skippy, which would mean that the Skippy demand curve would move to the right as consumers shift their preferences. Okay? Another thing that comes into play here are complements. Complementary goods are goods that go together. For example, peanut butter and jelly. So if the price of peanut butter increases substantially, then the number of people buying peanut butter should decrease. And if we're not selling as much peanut butter, we're probably not going to be selling as much jelly to go along with it. Other examples of complementary goods are hamburgers and hamburger buns, hot dogs, hot dog buns, hot dogs and mustard, that sort of thing. A fifth non-price determinant is consumer taste. And of course, people's preferences will change over time. Fashion's a good example of this. Music is a really good example too. For example, as I'm making this video in 2024, Taylor Swift is the biggest artist in the world. Tons of people go to her concerts. Prices are astronomical for tickets. Maybe in 10, 15, 20 years, she's not as popular. She's no longer touring. And that could be a shift in consumer preferences. Another example, and this is one that I've seen in my lifetime, is athletes can sometimes have their products fall out of favor because of something that they do in their personal life. For example, an athlete that's convicted of some sort of crime may see a big decline in their jersey sales because people don't want to be associated with them. Probably the most stark example of this I remember in my lifetime is the Michael Vick jersey. Michael Vick jerseys were extremely popular because he was a very popular player at one point. He was convicted of dog fighting, among other things, and people quit wearing his jerseys and all of that. A final thing that could impact the demand curve are expectations, and expectations is a really broad category. It could be expectations about the product itself, so how well you think the product's going to perform. It could be expectations about future events, like getting a better paying job. And so let's think about the better paying job aspect. If you think that your job is pretty secure and you're going to get a raise in the near future, you may decide it's the time to buy a new house. So you enter the market, shifting the demand curve to the right. On the other hand, if you decide to hold off, then you don't enter that market at all. Okay? So those are the major determinants of demand, and those are the things that will shift the demand curve to the right or to the left. If we want to take a quick look at a reference chart here, what are things that will increase demand and move it to the right? Well, if we have normal goods, increases in income, a rise in the price of substitute goods would cause the demand for a good to increase. If there's a drop in the price of a complementary good, that will cause the demand curve to move to the right. If there's an increase in population or market size, that's a rightward shift. If people decide in favor, just consumer preferences shift, that's a right move. And then positive future expectations as well. We also have some things that would cause it to move to the left. Okay, so that was the demand side of the market. We will talk about supply next and then discuss the concept of market equilibrium.